Alright, so I'm doing this video about the Canon R5 and R6. Now that it's been probably about 2 or 3 weeks since the original announcements. The A7S III was announced this morning, and I'm going to give you a little bit of my thoughts, mostly concerning the R5 and R6. Now that we know a little bit more about the landscape of what the direct competitors are from Sony, Panasonic, and even Nikon with the Z6 and Z7 ProRes RAW updates that came out a couple of months ago. So we've all heard about the various overheating issues that some people have had with mostly pre-production, but also I believe some people have production models of the R5 at least, and possibly the R6 as well. And I think those are very real limitations for some people, but not everyone. And the reason I say that is mostly because the Canon R5 and R6 are still mostly photographic cameras. Despite Canon's marketing about the 8K and the 4K and all those different impressive spec list things, but for most users and probably the target demographic, it's probably your wedding shooters and your fashion shooters that need the resolution or the speed from the R6 to be able to do their jobs, and also be able to capture, some video clips at a high bit rate and at a high within, professional level codecs in order to match footage with the Canon Cinema EOS line. And that's why I think, and this is my personal opinion, Canon is kind of playing 4D chess with all of us. I think by putting out the R5 and the R6 without having all the general compromises and cripple hammers that Canon has been known for with their mirrorless and their hybrid line and even their DSLRs to some extent. When the 5D Mark II came out, it could do 30p but not 24p until they patched it, I believe. But I do think that these cameras are actually going to lead people more to the Cinema EOS line if they have heavy video needs, because for most people and for most video people, they'll get a lot more out of the cinema style or the ENG style cameras than they would get out of a hybrid camera if video is your primary purpose. And I guess when I filmed this yesterday, I had in my first video that if you have needs for video or video is your primary purpose, probably better off getting a video camera. And I still kind of stand by that for video heavy people. If you need a rock solid camera that is not going to fail, it's not going to have many shortcomings, I still stand by that, but with a caveat to that, specifically with the Panasonic S1H, the way it's been engineered and designed. Although for continuous video autofocusing specifically, it may not be your first choice, and I think that's probably where, now that the A7S III has been released, or announced, I should say, it'll be released in September. That's the other caveat to that. And to an extent, probably the GH5 and the GH5S as well, because those are still great cameras, especially for indie people or indie people on a budget. But when you're getting into that price range, well, the price range that the GH5 is now, yeah, it's definitely entry level. But when you start getting into the S1H, the A7S III, and then you look at some of the cinema cameras that you can get into these days from Blackmagic or Zcam, if video is your first option, I would probably go either one of those routes, or even some of the older Sony, like the FS5 or FS5 II, or the FS7, there's a FS7 II, or even the older Canon C100 or C300 1 or 2. You could probably find those probably in the $2,000 to $5,000 range if you shop around. So for some people who are more interested in video, those might be better routes than going to a hybrid mirrorless camera, which no matter how great they are, they're still based on photography use. And no matter how great they are, they're still going to have those compromises when you're trying to put so much technology into a smaller size. Either going to have to do what a lot of people do and rig it up and have a lot of stuff hanging off your camera to get all the professional level inputs for specifically audio, or you're going to have a audio recorder, or you're going to have a guy run around with a sound bag, but your on camera shotgun mic. It's probably fine for vlogging, but that's not what you're going to really want to have if you're doing music videos or if you're doing like indie movies or something like that. So those are just my thoughts. I think it's a great time to get into the camera or video space. I think it's a great time to be a consumer of that kind of technology. This isn't to say one brand is better than the other. I think they're really all great at this point. It really comes down to what works best in your own personal workflow, what works best with how you work, what do you like to use. Me personally, I'm invested both in the Sony full frame E-mount as well as the Panasonic Micro Four Thirds and the L mount as well. I use that mostly for my personal work and personal photography, and I use the Sony for paid jobs just because it works and it's functional. So these are just my thoughts. Didn't want to make this video too long. Please comment below, hit subscribe. I'll be making more videos in the future. Till later.